Hi, hi guys. Thank you for joining. Can someone give me a thumbs up if you can hear me properly? Hi. Can I get a thumbs up, guys? Hi, good morning, good afternoon. Can I get a thumbs up? Can you hear me? Can get right into it. Thank you for the thumbs up, guys. Okay, wonderful. Thanks for joining. We are doing this again. We're doing another live today, talking about techniques on sustainability. We've started a series which we call Site Positive Approach, and we're talking about strategies that you can employ to achieve a higher level of sustainability in your design and construction. There is definitely a lot of interest in the topic, and we basically have been asking you through Instagram stories about the topics that you want to hear about, and rainwater harvesting was very high on the list. I also feel like it's actually one of the easier things to do on the site. And there is absolutely no reason why, any site, whether it's urban or rural, should not be harvesting rainwater. So we'll get right to it. We have a few questions that we have gathered through our Instagram stories, and we'll answer those questions. But yes, please feel free to send more questions on the chat, and we will take them up as well. As always, we'll try to keep the session short to 30 minutes. If you guys have follow-up questions, you can write that in the comments later on IGTV, or you can DM us, and we'll try to answer them as well. So now, as I was saying, rainwater harvesting, right? I feel like it's something that every site and every project should do, because rain is, after all, a free resource that we're getting every year, every cycle. And it's amazing to see that there is an immense water shortage in most of the cities where we live in now. In fact, we build a lot in Goa, and Goa has a very intense monsoon period for about 4 months. And it's amazing that even in Goa we have water shortages. So I actually live in Panjim, which is the capital city in Goa, and a lot of times in my building, we run out of water. So I just don't understand, how these two things can happen simultaneously in the same geographical place, where for 4 months in the year, we get non-stop rains in Goa, and then following that, we still face water shortages. So rainwater harvesting, I feel, is such a simple, traditional, old-time strategy. And we must use this free resource that we have, instead of, trying to kind of come up with new technologies or new ideas or whatever to solve this problem of the cities running out of water. Now, obviously, why? I mean, I can go into a whole session of why our cities are running out of water. Maybe I'll just touch on it a little bit now, but we won't go into a lot of detail. But of course, it's due to a lot of construction. And, because of a lot of construction, we are just building more and more sort of concrete, impervious surfaces. And therefore, the absorption of the natural rainwater, which was going back to recharge the underground water, is not happening anymore. We are creating, in cities, we are creating concrete surfaces, and then creating these stormwater drains where, the rainwater is supposed to drain, and therefore we're channeling it away from the city, and therefore, there is no recharge happening. And then to add to that, we are constantly using our underground water because of our increased water requirements, and so basically the water level keeps going down, and we're not recharging it. So obviously, as a result, we are having intense water shortages. So rainwater harvesting, what is it, right? It's very simple. It's basically saying that we're getting all this rain that, the wonderful sort of environmental cycles and earth cycles have programmed, and we're getting this so much rain, how can we use it? How can we maximize the use and the benefit of that rainfall? So rainwater harvesting can in general be done in two ways. One is that we can store it for reuse later, and the second is that we can actually recharge the underground water table with the rainwater that's falling. As I said earlier, if we had less construction, if we have, if we don't have so much density, then the rainwater that falls on the ground will naturally, percolate back into the underground and therefore will recharge the underground water. But with new construction, we are disturbing those natural patterns, and hence we have to design for, this percolation to happen once again, and, to also maximize it so we don't waste water that can just run off the site in haphazard ways, as storm water. Also what happens, guys, is that once we do construction, new construction, and then we let, we don't plan for the rainwater, the passage of the rainwater on our site, then, and if it just haphazardly leaves our site, then what happens in that case is that, the low-lying areas in our neighborhoods tend to get flooded. And this, again, we see it over and over, where our cities, there will be these low-lying areas in the cities which every monsoon season, every rainy season will get flooded. So again, in a small way, whenever we're doing an individual building or an individual project, where obviously we can't change the urban patterns of rainwater movement or stormwater movement, but we, in our own way, at least we're not contributing to the problem of, this flooding of low-lying areas, which, as you know, leads to a lot of issues of, disease spreading, of inconvenience to people, of, just damage to property and things like that. So going back to the two ways. So in fact, our very first question that we have here is, what are the different techniques to harvest rainwater? So as I said, there are two main techniques. One is that we can actually, collect the rainwater that's falling in on our building, on our site, and we reuse it on our own property. By doing that, we obviously do not use the municipal water that we're getting, from our taps, and therefore we are being more water efficient. One of the obstacles to implementing rainwater harvesting is that water in general as a resource is fairly cheap in terms of your water bills and things, and therefore people don't think that it's important enough to kind of save that amount of money. So monetarily, maybe it may not make sense, but common sense wise, it makes a lot of sense, and also as a responsibility to our earth and our planet, it makes a lot of sense. So one is storage, as I said, and the second one is to percolate it back underground. Now, let me talk about maybe the percolation part first, right? So the next question is, at what stage of construction should rainwater harvesting be implemented? You can actually, the beauty of rainwater harvesting is that you can implement it at any stage. You can actually even do it in an existing building. All you have to do is collect the rainwater that's falling on your roof, falling on your terrace, and channel it into either a water tank, or channel it such that it goes back into the underground water. All buildings, when they're designed, a responsible architect will design for, the rainwater to be channeled out of that building, right? Otherwise, you're going to have immense waterproofing issues and things like that. So you will have some drain pipe from your terrace. Even if it's a 50-year-old building, 60-year-old building, 100-year-old building, you will have a drain pipe in your terrace, right? So that drain pipe, basically, you just need to take all that water, which is exiting that drain pipe, and then channel it, which also just means put another pipe, right? Another vertical pipe. So it's so easy. What all we're talking about is, don't let it just fall everywhere. Don't, design a pattern as to where this water is going, and then decide, do you want to collect it, or do you want to put it back into the underground to recharge the underground water? Now, what are the criteria that you can think about in terms of making a decision whether to collect rainwater or to recharge the underground water. Collecting rainwater is very easy. All you can do is basically buy like a portable tank. You can buy a Syntex tank or a portable tank which has a very long life. You can put it on your ground, so you don't have to spend money on on digging underground. You don't have to build an RCC tank or create this immense infrastructure or anything like that. The simplest way is to get a Syntex tank. If you want, get it, put it on your first floor or on a higher floor. So again, the amount, the distance that your down pipe has to cover is even less. And then, you just have a tap, simple tap, and then reuse that water for irrigating your plants, for washing your verandas, your balconies, something as simple as that, right? So you're reducing your water use, your use of sort of new water that you would have used for these purposes anyways. So that is the simplest way of doing it. Now, in areas like Goa, for example, where we have a period of 4 to 5 months where the rain is basically concentrated within that time frame, I believe that storing of rainwater is not the greatest strategy. Why? First, because we just get a whole lot of rain in Goa. So even if we store it, there is a certain capacity, right? We can't possibly store all the rainwater that's falling on our buildings in Goa just because there is just so much of rainwater that's coming in. And so therefore the amount of storage that we can do is limited because of just land size, area required for it, cost associated with it, and things like that. So for me, it feels a little redundant to store rainwater in Goa. And it makes more sense to recharge the underground water table, because in most rural areas in Goa, the underground water table is fairly at a good level. But if we keep building again and again, over and over in Goa, which is happening, and we don't, think about recharging the rainwater, then that water table will start to drop, which again, we can see in the villages in Goa these days. There are these communal wells, which the whole village would use, and that water level has been dropping over the years, dramatically. And interestingly, on one of our sites, in one of the houses, Navovado, we actually built a well. And when we built it, when we did and I'll talk about the soil survey, but anyways, we did a soil survey, and we were told that we'll find water fairly close to the ground level, and we'll find it within, say, 5 meters. But once we started digging, we didn't find underground, didn't hit the underground water table until we dug almost 20 meters. And but in any case, we still built that well. It was an open well on the site at Navovado, and then we started recharging that well with all the rainwater from the roof areas of the house, and also the site water. And the water level now has gone up. So now we actually the water table, which was at 20 meters when we dug the well, is now almost like at 7 meters from the ground level. So we've seen an immediate change, and it's been the rainwater system has been functioning to its full capacity for the past 5 years. And the point is that instead of storing rainwater and then reusing it, we're recharging our groundwater, and then we can use the well water for the irrigation purposes or other purposes that we require that water for. But if you are in a place where you don't, for example in Delhi per se, right, where you just don't get that much rainfall, so in the northern areas, in the areas which are very hot, where you just don't get that much rainfall, and it is fairly hot even after the rainy season, I think storing rainwater makes a lot of sense. You store the rainwater in your in these sort of external portable water tanks, and then you can use a tap to reuse that water in your plants, for your irrigation and washing your car or any of those purposes. it is also not advisable to store rainwater for extended periods of time in a closed tank, because it will start to get obviously, right, there is like a biological process that will start to happen, so it will start to get algae and things like that. So and which a lot of people may consider as dirty water. So then in that case, the reuse may become more difficult. So, it's not advisable to store that rainwater for many, many months or for a whole year or so, things like that. It's better to kind of have it stored and then use it right away. Otherwise, you'll have to think of ways of aerating it and, all those things on mosquitoes. And, you just will end up creating a problem which will require extra additional efforts to kind of address. So my recommendation would be to kind of reuse that water as soon as possible. Again, it is advisable in my thought process that you if you can store rainwater, because there will be a limited capacity of rainwater that you can store, but recharging the underground water is always a good idea, because that tank, whatever tank that you guys plan, that will get filled up fairly quickly, because we do, no matter how even if you're talking about Delhi, I'm not talking about Rajasthan, like the hottest areas in Rajasthan, but we do get a lot of rainfall, and the tanks that you provide for storage can never be enough. So if you can do both, where you store some water for immediate use in the next few months and then recharge the overflow back into the underground, that would be ideal. Okay, so now let's talk about how do we recharge the water underground. So there are many ways. I talked about doing it in a well. So if you have an open well, or if you, in urban areas, if you have an existing bore well on your site, then that would be an excellent place to basically channel all the rainwater. So basically what you do is you have, for sloping roofs, we have these gutters. For flat roofs, you basically will provide a slope, and then you'll have a drain pipe, where from that drain pipe you take you collect the rainwater, you take it down vertically, and then either through underground pipes or through overground pipes, you basically try to channel it towards this recharge system, which could be a well, which could be a bore, which could be a recharge pit. And later I'll also talk about something called a rain garden. So basically that's the simplest system. Now, technicalities within it, right? So first thing is that you need to have a system where you flush out the rainwater that comes from the first rain. And why do you have to do that? Couple of reasons. First, because in cities and in places with high pollution, the first rain that comes down, tends to have sort of these chemicals from the air that gets mixed into the rain, and therefore that water is called acid rain, and we shouldn't use that water. And the second reason is that when the first rain comes, our roof surfaces will be dirty, right? So no matter how much cleaning and maintenance you do, it is after all the roof. So it will have, litter of the roof, of the leaves. It will have dust, mold. It may have, kind of bird poop, right? So the first rain will bring all of that, all of that kind of litter and impurities with it. So there needs to be a system where you can flush out your first rain. So typically in the downpipe, you have a valve which which is actually turned. So the first rain is just drained off, and then you turn the valve after the first rains, and then your water collection system sort of starts to function. So that is the first thing to think about. The second thing to think about is before you put the water, before the rainwater goes into your storage tank, or before the rainwater goes in to recharge your underground water table, it should ideally go through a filtration system. Again, this is to remove kind of the bigger level impurities, because rainwater is very pure. So when the rainwater is falling from the sky, it's actually very clean water. It only gets dirty once it actually touches man-made surfaces. Or ground, which is not a man-made surface. So basically, it needs to go through a filtration system so that a clean you're basically putting in clean water into your storage tank or back into the ground. And the filtration system is something very simple. It is basically a media, so it can be another smaller tank if you're storing water into a syntax tank, or you can actually dig it in the ground, like you can dig a filtration pit into the ground before and let the water go through that filtration pit before it goes into the final destination. And the filtration pit is typically comprised of some kind of rock media or gravel and sand. And guys, if you Google this, you'll find enough details of a typical sort of rainwater filtration system. So we don't even have to go into a lot of detail, but it's very, very simple. It's not complicated at all. So once the water goes through this filtration system, it is safe to be stored in your storage tank, reused, or put back into the ground. Now, let me go to the next question. The next question is, how do you select an area for harvesting in a site? And what is the volume of water that can be harvested? So this is really up to you. You can decide how much, as I said, how much can you store, how much land area do you have, how much investment you want to make into it, and you have an existing well or a bore well on the site, and where you can actually drain the water. If you have an existing system, then draining the water into it can be fairly easy. You can drain large volumes of water into it, and it will not cost that much. But that said, if you don't have that system, then you can still build kind of a percolation pit or a recharge pit, and the depth of that will come from a soil study. So you would have to have an expert come in and do a soil study for your land, so you know what your substrata is like, so you know what kind of soil you have, what is the absorption capacity, and a lot of times they can actually even tell you how far below is your underground water table, and they can actually help you in designing this recharge system to know what depth it needs to go to, and what kind of a sort of surface area it needs to have for the maximum amount of water to be percolated down. Now, also, every time you design a rainwater storage or percolation system, you must have an overflow, because the last thing you want is that one day there is just so much rain that your entire rainwater system basically overflows, and it becomes a problem instead of becoming kind of a positive thing. So always design an overflow, which basically takes the excess rainwater and puts it back into the common stormwater drainage system. Some of these things, when I'm saying it sounds very, very simple. It sounds like common sense. And I hope that, this is helpful, because, it just sounds like this is something that, once you get into it, you guys will just figure it out yourself. Okay, next question. What are the rainwater harvesting techniques to better utilize setbacks in urban areas? So absolutely, in urban areas, because land is a precious resource, you will utilize your setbacks to, either put your tank there, your storage tank there, or you will have your bore also in your setbacks, where, it will sort of be percolated over there. I'll tell you one more advantage. In my parents' house in Delhi, we have an underground tank. And that tank is close to my parents' bedroom, and because that tank is abutting my parents' bedroom is always cool. So because there is a water tank, so in a way it's like through evaporative cooling, if you are to do an underground tank near any of your rooms in the house, that will also result in cooling of those rooms. So, there are multiple advantages. You could actually, if you are designing something new, then it could be very exciting to actually do a tank under the plinth of your house, which used to be done in sort of Rajasthan and the desert hot areas, because the underground water tank will cool your rooms which are above the water tank. So yeah, that's very exciting to me. Now the next question is, what are the for apartments, does the cost of an underground tank justify the effort? If you were ever going to ask me a question about whether an effort into sustainability is worth it or not, my answer will always be yes, right? Because you can't just look at short-term costs and short-term results. We have to think long-term. We have already really messed with our planet. I think that as per most scientific research out there, we have already reached the tipping point where we cannot reverse, climate change anymore. We are constantly hearing about, icebergs breaking down and, glaciers melting and glaciers disappearing. If we focus on the news about climate change and environmental degradation, it is quite dire. So, any effort that we can make, even though it may sound very small, I think that by collective action, we can have a huge amount of impact. So yes, your efforts, no matter how small, towards rainwater harvesting will have a huge long-term impact. And you will sleep well at night. You will sleep well at night knowing that you've done something, beyond just looking out for your immediate concerns and returns. So, okay, next question. Positioning of rainwater tank and its construction. And we have another question related to that, which is about construction materials for water tanks. So guys, as I said, you can easily just get a portable water tank, a Syntex water tank, which can be kept on the ground, or you can actually even put it underground. So that is, I think, one of the simplest, most maintenance free ways of doing it. Otherwise, mostly water tanks are built in RCC, and they are waterproofed. You can also do it in masonry, actually, water tanks, and waterproof them, but RCC just kind of gives you a better, better waterproof surface, a better waterproof shell to contain the water. On the inside, you can either do a neat cement plaster, or you can actually do a tiled surface. A tiled surface will obviously be better in the long run, because it will not accumulate so much algae, and will be easier to clean and maintain. Next question, can we still construct wells? Are they safe or susceptible to pollution? You can construct wells. It may be expensive. It is expensive to construct wells, depending on where you're building it. The costs can vary immensely. So I think that this question is a very location specific question. And when you say that are they safe or susceptible to pollution, I don't understand this question. Like, why would they be, unless people are dumping trash into it? But if it's within your property, you can control that. So I don't see why it would be susceptible to pollution. If you're also asking about sewers which are underground, maybe in urban areas, and if you were to do a bore well or to do a open well, and the water could get mixed, yes, that problem exists, but that problem exists no matter what, right? And it is happening in our urban areas. The sewage water is getting mixed with our underground water, and it's all happening underground where we can't see it, but yeah, it's happening, and we are we are facing the brunt of it. Okay, next question is, how do you convince the client for that extra cost? This I think I've addressed many times. If you get an external tank, if you store the water, it will not be an external cost. If you're just percolating it back into an existing well or an existing bore well, the additional cost is very, very less. So really, there is really no additional cost here. Maximum, the additional cost is of doing this filtration bed, which really, is not that expensive. And yes, that's it. So there is the last question is about purification filters, which we've addressed. There is someone here asking us about a bioswale. Maybe we address the bioswale, how to do a bioswale in a different session. And also, look it up online. There are several resources about, bioswales that you'll come across. So it's not something, it's not like completely rocket science. It's been done many times before. So yes, please look it up online, and even the resources that we've already provided on our Instagram. But if you still want to know more, then, we can take it up in another session. Give an example from your project on rainwater harvesting. Fatima, we've done it in all our projects, every single one of them. The first project, we actually stored it in a water tank. Then I learned that storage in Goa doesn't make sense. The second project in Navovado, we built an open well. We recharged the water from our roofs into that open well. And at House of Three Pavilions, we have done an extensive water management system, which we've talked about extensively on our Instagram and on our blog, on our website. So our link to the website is on our in our bio, so you can go to our blog and you can read about it. So I think that we've covered that extensively before. Okay, someone's asking about building a water tank below the house. What technique? Technique is simple. Just dig it and build a water tank like an RCC tank. It's like building a swimming pool. It's not complicated. And precautions, yes, make sure that your tank doesn't overflow, because then your house is going to be flooded. Cool. So Santosh is saying that they've done rainwater recharge to a few wells in Andaman's Havelock Island. Lovely, wonderful. Please share more about it if you want, and we'll put it up on our Instagram. If you have photographs or case studies, we would love to talk about it, maybe on our blog. Wonderful. Okay, guys, we've run out of time. I'm going to quickly browse through our questions to see if I've missed something. I think I've gotten them all. There was a question about grey water management, and that is a whole another session. So we can take it up another time. I did mention something called rain gardens, so I didn't get a chance to talk about it, but you guys can possibly Google it. It's just basically, if you have more land area, you can do a more shallower system of percolating water. So instead of a deep well or a bore, you basically have a larger garden, which basically is a large percolation system. So it's something that can look pretty, can be less expensive, and can work really well if you have the land area for it. So okay, guys, thank you so much for joining. I hope this session was helpful. We are gonna do a few more. We're trying to get some lovely, some exciting guests to talk about more topics on following a site positive approach to site planning as well as architectural design. If you have other topics that you would like us to talk about, please send those to us and we would consider them. We will save this on our IGTV so you guys can see it later. Leave your additional comments, additional questions in our comments, and let us know how you liked it. Thanks a lot. Have a great weekend. Bye bye.